A sad note for you now. An American author, Paul Auster, has died aged 77. The writer of noirish novels like the New York Trilogy had a particularly big following here in France. He died at his home in Brooklyn on Tuesday from complications of lung cancer. I'm going to talk more about his life and his work with our arts editor, Eve Jackson. Hi, Eve. Tell us a bit more about Paul Auster.
Well, Paul Auster is, of course, best known for, as you say, the New York Trilogy mystery novels. Now, during his career, though, he wrote more than 30 books. They were translated into more than 40 languages, and he gained his cult status in the 1980s and 90s. Now, he was better known, actually, in Europe than he probably was back home in America, and he is a rock star here in France, particularly in Paris. In 1993, he was given the Prix Médicis Étrangère for his book Leviathan. He was also a commander de l'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres. He spent 4 years here living in the early 70s, where he honed his craft, he said, as a writer, and he translated French books, actually, into English. Here he is in 1987, speaking to French TV in French.
Ce qui m'a attiré beaucoup à Paris de venir quand j'avais 23 ans, je crois, c'était la poésie française. Et j'ai déjà commencé de traduire aux États-Unis et je voulais partir un peu, vivre à l'étranger. Alors Paris et la France étaient logiques pour moi, alors j'ai resté.
Paul Auster speaking French when he was younger, just another reason for the French to love him. Tell us a bit more about his life.
Well, he was born in Newark in the United States in 1947. He was the son of Jewish-Polish immigrants. Now, he studied at Columbia University in New York. He was married twice. He met his wife, who he stayed with until his death, Siri Hustvedt, in 1981. He was much influenced by his life and the people he met. The sudden death of his father prompted him to write 1982's The Invention of Solitude. That is a reflection on father-son relationships. He also revealed in his writing that his paternal grandfather actually was shot and killed by his grandmother during their time together, who was acquitted on grounds of insanity.
And his real breakthrough as an author came with the New York Trilogy in the 80s.
That's right. The first novel of the trilogy was called City of Glass. It was published in 1985. It was a twist on the detective genre and centred on 4 private investigators who were called Blue, Brown, Black and White. But he had many other novels, including Timbuktu and Moon Palace, The Music of Chance and Leviathan. He also wrote a screenplay for 1995's Smoke, which starred Harvey Keitel, and he co-directed the follow-up, which was called Blue in the Face. Now, in 2017, Paul Auster, he published a massive book, 866 pages. It was called 4321, and it was about US society. For him, that really was his masterwork. Here he is in an interview on French radio in 2018, talking about the years it took him to hone what he called his writing muscle.
L'écriture devient quelque chose qui ne vient pas de la tête, mais du corps. Et je crois que ça prend des années à arriver à ce stade.
Well, last year, Paul Auster published a photo book which is called Blood Bath Nation, with his photographer son-in-law, whose name is Spencer Ostrander, and it focused on gun violence in America.
And in recent years, Auster's own life was struck by tragedy.
Terrible things that happened in the later years. 2 years ago, his 10-month-old granddaughter, Ruby, she died after ingesting heroin. His son, Daniel, who's the child's father, later died of an overdose 10 months later. Prior to his death, Daniel had been found guilty of negligent homicide. Auster never talked publicly about his deaths. His final novel was published last year in October. It's called Baumgartner. It's about a widower in her 70s. He is, of course, survived by his wife, who we talked about earlier, and their daughter, Sophie.
Eve, thank you so much for telling us about Paul Auster, an American author very loved here in France as well. Thank you very much.